So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. I'm joined with Andrew Missey. I'm excited to be here. Andrew is the CTO of Convos, formerly PumpSet, which is a texting service for campaigns, messages you can send, but I believe also get responses, right?
Yes, correct.
So, and that's really interesting because what we've seen a lot of, and I've talked about it a lot, and I don't mean to jump into it a lot. I want really Andrew to be the focus of this conversation. But what we've seen a lot of is these texts and billboards and no tax on tips and billions of dollars spent on things that generally politicians don't deliver on. But the fact that this is a system where actual replies come is really, I think, a significant difference. I know it's a significant difference because it's not just a bunch of just messaging that really goes nowhere.
Yeah. And first of all, thanks for having me on, Coach. I'm really excited to get into the nitty gritty of what we do. But yeah, Convos was really born from the blasts of political text that we were getting, where it was a big block of text and a link. And there's no personalization, no engagement. And we thought there has to be a better way to reach out to voters and make them feel these campaigns care about what they think. And the best way to do that over the texting vehicle is having responses come back. Whenever they ask a question, they can feel like, oh, somebody's responding to me or something is giving me the information I'm looking for. And that was ideally the idea behind Convos.
Yeah, that's really an important technology, and you've developed that technology, right? So when that text goes out and that response go comes in, how can you go take us through the whole process of how the response does the candidate get at some point the text and the question, or how does that work? Or was it AI that was a part of the process?
Yeah, so great question. So the way we do it is when we onboard a candidate, we load up their account with what we call source points. And those source points can be anything from policy information, events they may have coming up, basically anything about that candidate that they want the agent that's going to be texting on their behalf to know. And then they send out these starter text messages that the campaigns can craft and they can say whatever they want, and those get blasted out to everybody. And then when voters start responding, that's when our agent kicks in, starts pulling information from the source points that the campaigns provided, and actually uses those to have the conversations based on whatever the voter may be asking at that time.
And that's really interesting because when you think about it, like customer service used to be just like that. Now it's a little different.
Sure.
There's a lot of chat and stuff, but customer service used to be just that. You used to get a person on the phone, and that person would actually enter your question into the computer and then relay the information that was necessary to answer your maybe technical problem. But this is really a good thing because you're getting an understanding of the candidate. And my feeling is when we get into that, when this thing really takes shape, when really candidates start using this technology, is we're going to maybe get away from incumbents because generally speaking, the only thing that separates an incumbent from a candidate, from a newly anointed candidate, like so let's just say Andrea Ocasio-Cortez. She went knocking on doors, she got the signatures, she got the primary nomination. But really, she was just the same as the other guy. It's just the other guy took for granted he was going to get the nomination. So you had this one anomaly where somebody was unseated, but we don't see that very much in the House or the Senate where somebody's actually replaced. We see 100 years of tenure in both the House and the Senate. So this is a lot different. When people are actually getting responses and actually understanding the person that's running against the person that's been there for all this time, it really makes a significant difference in the process.
Absolutely. And the other thing we've noticed is it's really valuable for the smaller campaigns, right? You mentioned those incumbents usually have a lot of money that they can throw into this communication campaigns and whatnot. But to get all the volunteers and everybody together that they need to be able to have this type of responsiveness to inbound questions to them is really difficult. And for us to be able to do this at a scale where they could send a message out to 100,000 or even maybe a million people, and every single person that replies gets an on brand, on message, to the point response that feels like it's just direct from the campaign. I feel like that's really the value here.
That is absolutely the value because when you think about it, just like you said, let's break it down. You've got a guy that's been in office for 30 years. He's got a staff. His staff has friends. Their staff is telling their friends, "We need you to participate so I can keep my job." And then there's this whole network that's already established. Whereas somebody that just comes into the new game of politics, which is something I've done, you've got to develop an entire infrastructure. And it's literally virtually impossible because, but this is different. I call Andrew and I say, and we do just what you said. I go through an interview with you where you enter all my things are education. My things are a realistic based governing policies and a
Sure.
more efficient government. I answer all those questions, and I've got a system in place now from that moment forward that can really answer a lot of constituents' concerns. And maybe I will fail in my response, but they're still getting a real response that pertains to me. Maybe in their eyes they
Absolutely.
won't like me, but
There's the other side of it too, where we also have the ability to then analyze those conversations, right? So we can actually pull out and surface to the campaigns the topics that people actually care about the most. Do they care about healthcare? Do they care about immigration? And what are their views on them? And then how can we further kind of dial in our messaging there? And that's kind of the superpower as well, is being able to have a pulse on your base immediately just by the conversations that they're having.
and that's really incredible that this technology is available to any new candidate because
Yeah.
now before I get into the questioning of how does like when we sign up with you, we're going to get into the question of cost, but just
Sure.
imagine this. I'm going to use a hypothetical scenario. Right now we have no subsidies for the Affordable Care. The
Mhm.
question may come, how does Jeff feel about healthcare? And my answer is first, let's get back to basics. Let's get the subsidies. Let's not talk about universal healthcare and let's not talk about breaking down the entire medical system across the country. We've got one thing dithering in the Senate, some sort of enhanced incentive, some sort of enhanced subsidy. Now, that message is clear from my point. I can have that. I can respond that every time, but it's hard to convey in an advertisement. It's probably impossible to convey in an advertisement. Maybe it'll come across in a debate here and there. But now I've
Mhm.
got the ability to respond to every family's concern that I no longer have insurance simply because I can no longer afford it. And so that's really an incredible avenue I have now as a new candidate, as a new person in the business of politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what the funny thing is there too, I'm sure when you're speaking to people about that issue about the subsidies, it's not something that you just mentioned it. It's not something you can convey in an advertisement, just like it's not something you could probably convey in just a single text message, right? There may be nuance that you want to elaborate on. And that's something that our platform allows you to do too, right? So if you have a lot of source points, as we call them, about that issue, then the voter that's talking with the agent can really drill down into the meat and potatoes of what you really feel about that issue and really get into the specifics.
And that's really great because I'm very specific on certain things, and I'm very passionate about certain things. What
Sure.
happened with me is when I ran for politics, I made it clear I didn't want to raise money. I didn't want to take somebody's $20 that could have easily went to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. That $20
Right.
would not really it would help my campaign in a big way as long as they
Mhm.
keep rolling in. But again, all I'm doing was putting yard signs in people's yards with that money. I may improve my website, and somehow you may be able to navigate that website to get some question answered. But this
Mhm.
changes the entire game and really opens up the path to a lot of candidates. And there's a lot of people I give credit. If I have to give credit once in a while to Donald Trump, but he's engaged a lot of people. I don't know that
Sure.
I'm a fan, but he's definitely got some real activism going on both sides of the aisle. So good for him.
Yeah.
And then we've seen those new candidates coming. I interview them all the time now. They're coming
Yeah.
out of the surface. So how does Andrew get the point across that this is really what you need to be the game changer? Because it really is the game changer.
Yeah, and that's the uphill battle we're going against. There's a lot of people that are really coming around to artificial intelligence and using it in their daily life. And then of course there's a lot of people that are still very hesitant because I would honestly say it's because of the way that AI rolled out into everyday life. When they first came out with some of the models, they weren't very accurate. They made a lot of mistakes. They hallucinated. And so people automatically gained a little bit of mistrust there, and I think now they're getting better and better, but that trust has to be built up. And something that we're doing is we're segueing from there. The political space is amplifying that. So the political space really is trying to be very careful with AI because of the dangers of some uses of AI, we take the stance that we want to be the standard of transparency and ethicalness when using this stuff. So a lot of the campaigns we onboard, we tell them you should disclose that the voter's talking to a virtual assistant in the first message, because what we've found is a lot of voters are actually more receptive to that transparency, and then those actually end up being more long, thoughtful conversations. And maybe that's because they don't feel judged by the agent versus maybe a real person, and they're open to just getting the information they want. But it's a really interesting psychological aspect of that messaging as well.
Yeah, and like you said, with AI, there was a race to get to be a part of the to be in the game, right?
Yeah.
So tech companies got raced to be in the game, and really they turned
Mhm.
out some crappy products, and they
Sure.
built it up that it's going to be better than anything. So like it's still till today when I call the bank and they say I'm Eli and I'm your virtual assistant. Now they do divulge there. The first thing I say is my grandma needs a haircut. Pay a bill. Okay. And I just know it's not, it's really an AI was basically either a race to the bottom or a race to the top. But now with this is entirely different because this is like you said, it's well thought out, it's well presented, and it's really we've had nothing like this in politics before. And so
Yeah.
not only could it be the thing that changes the whole political spectrum in America as far as candidates, as far as incumbencies, because I do see that happening.
Yeah.
But it can also be the thing that brings AI to a better standard, a better, like you said, first of all, you should have the disclosure. And then
Yep.
second of all, you should have a better system in place than what's been in
We
place.
also took a lot of time developing the guardrails as well, because as good as it's getting, it can still make mistakes, right? And when you are working with campaigns and political candidates, the stakes are high, and you never want it to relay something that the campaign doesn't believe. And so, what we tell our clients is we've built a very closed circuit AI system where there are multiple checks in place before a text goes out from the agent to make sure that whatever response was generated matches what information we've been provided by the campaign. We don't go and search the internet for information that we didn't get. It's very locked down to strictly what those campaigns provided us. And I think that brings a lot of peace of mind as well, because we always tell people get in there and try it, because you'll see no matter how many times you try to trick it or manipulate it, it's always going to lock in to that messaging.
And that's really great that it's not just searching 100 different internet and 100 different websites to come up with an
Right.
answer. It's actually coming up with the candidate's real true feelings. And
Exactly.
and that's exactly what you want is you really want to know your candidate. The only thing we've had up till now is knowing this Mitch, Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell for the last 30 years. We know them, we vote for them, we see their name on the ballot, and we automatically vote for them. Now Jeff comes along and runs against one of them
Yep.
and really has some specific answers that may, pardon the expression, bite me in the butt. Well, I didn't use it as bad as I could have. So that may bite me in the butt, but at least it is truly my feelings. Whereas we don't have that now, and I really love that. I really wish that was a tool. So let me just jump into a question. And some candidates are going to really have this question before they sign up. Let's talk about cost. You sign
Yeah.
up. How does it work? How do you present a contract to the candidate?
So, me and my co founder are really excited about this. We don't have any fees, registration costs, or outside costs other than the texts that the campaign sends. And the way that works is throughout, like, for example, we're in April, it's April 7th. So, if in the month of March, we add up all of the texts that a campaign may have sent in the month of March, and April 1st, they get a bill for those texts. And those are outbound and inbound. So, replies do count, but we like to think that if there's a good conversation being had, that's worth those text messages. At the high end, we do have a tiered structure. So it definitely depends on how many texts you're sending. The more text you send, you get some volume based pricing, which is really affordable and very competitive in this industry. We actually are trying to tell people, like, hey, even if you don't want the AI aspect of this, we do just like the one shot blasts for like the old school folks as well. And our pricing is really competitive there. But basically, with that scaling thing, once you've reached a certain amount of texts, it's super affordable. That's all you're really paying.
And does the candidate get an alert? Can he set a budget?
Yeah, actually, they can set the length of chat or messages they want in any given chat. So if you launch a conversation with 100,000 contacts and you want to make sure that nobody just starts spamming you and running up your bill, you can say, hey, I only want the max messages to be 20 messages. And once that hits, they can set a custom message that says, hey, I can't talk anymore, or contact us at this number, reach out for more questions. That's a good way to control that as well.
That's a great idea because there are going to be some people that try to ambush some candidates with, like I said, if they
Absolutely.
have a lot of volunteers, they can say, "Hey, let's really screw this guy." And that's a great. And you've really put, like you said, the guardrails. You've really put this all together, and that's really incredible because everybody is on a budget. And my feeling has always been, we candidates that really prevail are the ones that raise entirely too much money and spend entirely too much money, and really don't. I always say Kamala Harris ran on billions of dollars just on emotion. They just wanted her to be the
Hmm.
candidate and win. But she had no campaign. I mean, she
Sure.
literally sat on The View and said, "I wouldn't do anything different." It's like, okay, can you really say that? You've been in office for you. Can you really say that you wouldn't change a thing? She just felt like she was going to win. Whereas if we had this openness where she really was pressed on issues and those responses came back according to how she did her initial interview, it would have probably worked well for her versus to her approach that she took. Obviously, she lost, so it didn't work well for her. But knowing how she really felt about some things, this would have changed her could have changed her outcome.
Absolutely. And it really goes back to wanting to build that personal relationship with your base and make them feel like they're being heard and make them feel like they know what you believe. That's a big part of it too. And piggybacking off of that, something that we see a lot of people do is they'll run a conversation with a bunch of folks, and then they'll go, because we allow you to see every single chat, the transcript for every single chat. They'll pick a bunch of their favorite ones, and then they'll personally give those people a call with the transcript in front of them. So they already know, calling this person, what that person cares about, what's important to them, who they are. And so that really makes a difference, I think, when it comes to the personal touch as well.
And the fact that they're actually getting the feedback that already went to them. Like when they see
Right.
that chat, because if it's a volunteer that says, "You really need to call this guy. He was really inquisitive. I talked to him for 20 minutes. What'd you talk about?" And they're real brief. No, he's got real notes to refer to. And really
Exactly.
engage this guy and could possibly create a new volunteer too, or a new passionate volunteer that really gives 100% commitment to the campaign. And
Yes.
that's really a plus. That's really, again, another game changer in all this. And I just think that's really great because that politics is changing, and everybody I interviewed, there's all the we're focused on the negative, and believe me when I tell you there's a lot of negative. We all know there's a lot of negative, but the fact that there's that old saying, "Never waste a good crisis." The fact that all that you got that you're coming out of this with this new approach, and other people are coming out with other things, it's just incredible that we're having these momentum. And I think, like you said, like Google, when Google came out, it changed the entire advertising. It used to be only the yellow pages. So
Sure.
all you really saw was you opened this big yellow big book was about this big. They dropped it at your door once a year, and all you really saw was the bigger the ad, the one that was generally the one you called. Or
Yep.
if you were the reverse psychology, you called the smaller the ad because you were more for the small guy. But there was no idea what they were how they were gonna perform. There was no
Right.
references behind it or anything, which this isn't. And then Google came along, which you're really getting specific contacts and specific companies to call in. And so this is really a big game changer. So you could be the next Google of politics. You could, I mean, and that would really
Love to.
be I think it could happen because it changes everything. And that's why I was so excited to interview you because I was reading the notes. This is all the stuff I came up with in my mind is I could have used this service when I
Mhm.
ran for office. And all I got to meet 17 elderly people at a Golden Corral just ready to rip me apart because I probably live in one of the most conservative districts in the country. And sooner or later, I could soften them because I do have some realistic approaches to certain things. But it
Sure.
took a lot to get to that point where I didn't have to run out the back door in the first few minutes. And this is entirely different. First of all, I don't have to show up in that room in a hostile environment. They can decide if they want anything to do with me from real responses.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the other side of it too, when there is like a hostile response or a negative response, because we handle that pretty well, I think. The way we do that is in our system, in our pipeline, we actually look for the intent behind responses as well. So if somebody responds back, we get a lot of crazy stuff that comes back, like curses or I don't like you or I don't believe you or whatever. it can measure the level on that and it can say, hey, it can decide, hey, this isn't a conversation worth having and spending the money to try to text this person. Or it can decide, hey, I think maybe we can persuade this person. Maybe we can tell them, hey, maybe what you've heard isn't correct. And maybe we can show you what we actually believe. And we have a case study on our website right now. And we had a candidate who sent a message out to a contact and the contact started the conversation with he's a fraud. And if you go about 10 messages later, that conversation ends with I'm going to tell my whole family to vote for him, which
Right.
is just incredible.
That is beautiful because the truth is there's a lot of hard feelings for politicians.
Yeah.
And so when they start out with he's a fraud, it's because he's covered too much of what they want to hear and they've
Mhm.
heard it all before and they've seen zero on the delivery end. And so now though that this guy was able to go through a whole conversation and really feel out this candidate, he didn't lose the voter, he grew the voter. My whole my whole career has been in the hospitality business, and I always say it's more important to have great guest service recovery than it is to have great guest service. It's probably more
Yeah.
important to have more great guest service recovery simply because yeah, people make mistakes, but it's showing you care enough to fix the mistake that really changes hearts and minds. And
Absolutely.
that's something that you're offering these candidates is that ability to do that.
It's true. And the best case studies we have aren't the ones where we have 500 responses where the first message is, sounds good, I'm going to vote for them. The best case studies are the ones where we really won that person back, like you're saying, really earned it, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. That's a saying a lot of candidates use. I want to earn your vote, but they don't. They do earn the vote, and then they don't keep that faith when
Sure.
and that's something that we really need to see change in America. We really need to see that. There's so much going on, so many good questions out there. I would cover so many things again. If I were a candidate again, I would love, if I were a candidate, I would have loved to have, if I ever am a candidate, I will have this tool that you're offering because there was so many unanswered questions that people didn't really get to know me. And that's when I came up with the conclusion that competitive politics wasn't for me. I just wanted to raise awareness, not money. And so I came to the conclusion the podcast was the best way to do that. And I got out
Mhm.
of competitive politics. I got out of running for office simply because one, I don't think I would have ever won an election with the old system in place. But with
Yeah.
this new system in place, I really think it could really not only turn the voters around, it could turn the candidates around.
Absolutely. And we also do a lot of coaching with our clients because, as you're saying, the current way of texting voters is very static. And that's what they're used to in their texting platforms. They're used to sending out those blasts. So, a big effort has been kind of educating on how to write starter messages, even that invite the conversation, because that's an art in itself getting people to say, hey, you don't have to jam all of the information that you want to convey in that first text, because that's what they're trying to do, or they're trying to jam a link in there. We've actually found that if they have a link in their source points and the voter themselves actually gets to that link on their own, maybe they've chatted with the agent for a little bit and then the agent's determined, hey, this is a good time to send them the website link or whatever. We've seen as high as 50 to 60% click through on those links because it felt like it was a choose your own adventure and you reached it. And they're much more willing to continue that
That's
journey.
incredible because I can get into some specifics. For example, I knew when they were running for president, they both agreed no tax on tips. I knew it was a concession to sell the bigger bills.
Yeah.
And so it was, right? So you've got this no tax on tips. I work with service. They're so excited. They're getting this $25,000 additional tax break. And I said, keep in mind, it's only for 3 years. The
Yeah.
tax cut, the $4 trillion that they've taken out of people's livelihood, of people's lives, is forever. And they've
Yeah.
just given it back to corporate America. That's forever. The little pittance you got is for 3 years. Now, if we have that conversation on a campaign level, and you're able to click and see more specific rather than me trying to cover it in a small room in a small period of time with people going, I really want that $25,000. And they don't. And then it's like, it's
Yeah.
entirely different, and you're up against the pros who know how to message in a big way versus you're the little guy only conveying a certain message to 18 people that are walking out of the room completely unconvinced and probably gonna go, because they always say somebody will say something terrible about somebody to 100 people, but if it's really something nice, they probably won't even mention it. The average person won't even mention it. And so this is entirely, I just keep prefacing how this is such a big game changer. And I really, looking at it from my own aspect, if I ever ran for office again, this is a tool I would use.
Yeah, absolutely. It really helps, getting that reach when you don't have the big staff and the big budget that a lot of the incumbents have.
But immediately signing up with you almost do
Yes, at an affordable price, I would
at
say.
an affordable, because it's not affordable. Even just volunteers, you can say they're all working for free. They have to have an office space. They have to have phones. They have to have they probably have to all have to have laptops, which cost money, and internet, which costs money. This isn't, you're
Yep.
setting up shop. You're literally setting up shop with Andrew and this incredible organization you've developed. And like I said, it really could. But then again comes the idea of, are you looking for investors to get the point across? Or are you just looking to organically grow through the internet? Because it could do that. But again,
Yeah.
is what's your future plans for getting the point across? Is this is really something every candidate should have access to? Especially
Yeah.
every.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually started this company with the name PubSent, which was short for public sentiment, and that we started early last year. And we've since begun our rebrand and our transition over to Convos. And we felt like Convos was a much more apt name for us anyway, because public sentiment is only a very small piece of what we do, which is what we measure how people feel about certain candidates. But ultimately, our mission is to have better, real conversations. And that's where that name and those values came from. In terms of where we're going next, I think a lot of it is reaching out to more and more campaign managers, getting onto these campaigns in the midterms and forward. And a lot of the clients that we've come garnered has been through referrals. So people that have used our product felt like, oh, wow, this is a totally, like you said, a totally different way, almost an evolution of the text message, the political text. And they've referred us, and that's how we've gotten a lot of our business so far. So yeah, still very in the early stages, but continuing to grow that base as well.
This has incredible potential. This really does, because like I said, from me looking at it, from me thinking out loud, that if I had this tool when I ran for office, it would have changed everything. It would have
Yeah.
literally gave me, I think I would have been a good public servant, but I never really got the opportunity, and that's just fine. I have no regrets, and at 60 years old, I'm fine with the way things went. But
Yep.
the truth is, we need new people in politics. And young
Sure.
people will embrace this more than even older people. Young people that are, and we've seen the engagement increase significantly in the last, I guess you could literally say 13 years, because we've literally had this initiative for 4 years. It went away for 4 years, and it seems to reappear at this new vigorous push.
Yeah. Even in a general sense, SMS is still texting is still relatively newer in the political campaigning space. A lot of politicians still send out a lot of direct mail to mailboxes and as well as email. And so texting I feel like is still trying they're still trying to figure it out and still find that sweet spot. And I think that's where we're trying to fit ourselves into is being able to send those messages, but then have the response that people want or expect in that vehicle, rather.
First of all, if you take out the mailing is expensive. And generally
Yes.
there it is, the big giant postcards, very colorful, and it doesn't really say anything. Again, it's almost as expensive. In a way, it's almost as expensive as billboards, other than it's mailing hits every home. Billboards are literally sitting there on the interstates.
Yeah.
But there is no specifics. And
Right.
really the only thing the mailings do is separate the boys from the men. It really does. The all that ability to have that expense, that ability to pay that expense is really what makes candidates prevail at this point. But
Sure.
this is entirely different. This is entirely, and like you said, then you can click on a link or you can click on and get more specifics on a particular issue, really
Yep.
understand that person's approach, and maybe even change the way you see it. And
Mhm.
really, at that point, you could really quiz the older candidates to the point where you scare them off. No longer are they scaring the newer candidates off. Now
Mhm.
you've really changed the game to the point where they can't compete, and that would
Yeah.
be really nice because the younger
Coach,
people.
I have a question for you, Coach. How do you use AI in your daily life right now? Are you accustomed with ChatGPT or any of
Yeah,
those
absolutely. I
platforms?
literally so just today, because I have another interview probably coming up soon, and
Sure.
he's a former priest. He literally got thrown out of the fired from priesthood for turning in a priest that was a sex offender. And
Gotcha.
he okay, so the first interview was he was bashing Pope Francis for how he was handling the situation. So today, my AI was how is Pope Francis handling the situation versus how is Pope Leo now handling? And AI really produced this incredible comparisons. So that's often I use AI all the time, and it's really something important because I use it on my phone. So even when I'm waiting around in a doctor's office from because I or whatever it is that I'm doing, I am able to do that research, and AI has been an incredible thing for me to really I researched you on AI, and I was really able to get an understanding. I would have to say at this point, I'm almost to the point where every interview is an AI search at this point.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm finding that a lot of the people that are very AI averse haven't given it the chance like you have or like I have, where they can actually see the potential and what's possible with it. And it's more just this scary thing that is still an unknown to them. And I think that's one of the hardest things to break through. And I think that's what we're trying to do as well.
Yeah. And so I had this conversation about AI, about investing in AI, and I said, just be careful because a lot of what
Yeah.
AI does good is free. And a lot of
Yeah.
what they really don't the customer service part of it that they get paid for, they do terrible at. But this is something where if Andrew said, I'm going public, I would say that's the one company. So Warren Buffett always tells the story of when the combustible engine came out. Over 2,000 companies built cars, but only three prevailed. So of those 2,000 companies, one was Allstate. I never knew Allstate built a car, but only the three big guys. But I could literally see you being the guy that is worth it because it changes everything and engages people in politics in a big way. And it's not an approach I've ever seen with AI before. Just like you said, have I ever used AI to research candidates? Not as
Yeah.
much. But
Sure.
interviews, yeah, because for sure, and this would be an incredible way to utilize that platform. So I do think that that this will be like when I talk to candidates from now on, I'm going to be like, reach out to Andrew because I'm talking to a candidate tomorrow, I believe, or I got to look at my schedule. Saul Spady, his
Mhm.
parents, his parents initiated charter schools in the Seattle area for the first time. And he's really a political activist, and he could use this service for his campaign because he's got so much. When we talk, I'm fascinated. It's an entirely different approach than anything
Yeah.
I've ever seen, and he's so passionate. He's really good at what he has to explain. And this would be his kind of thing that opens the world up to him at a small fee, at a
Yeah.
smaller
Absolutely.
fee, at a smaller fee than what you would be up against in the old school ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody like him who has a lot to say and being able to put that all into a system that basically can say it for him to everybody is super, super cool.
Yeah, and he's reaching out to a lot of young people, which would go right to that sort of text AI service. So
Yeah,
this has
100%.
been I am so excited about this, Andrew. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me
Thank
all
you,
about your
coach.
company. It's incredible. It really is. From my point of view, it would have changed everything for my campaign. And I strongly believe that just looking at it, and I was like, wow, this is, and somebody else had mentioned you in the last interview I had that they were working with you. I think it was some military people that I have to look up the name right now, but I said, "This is just great. This really changes everything. You literally open up the world to you. You literally have so much at your fingertips at this point. Now you have a staff. You have an ability to communicate a message
Yeah.
that's worthwhile,
Yeah.
and I really love it. But so before we go ahead and get right into every specific that we need to do to get a hold of Andrew Missy, to get a hold of Convos, for candidates to know what the first steps are, how that's walk them through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say within the next month, we're launching our new website, convos.ai. That's convos.ai. You can also find myself and my co-founder, Tom, on LinkedIn, Andrew Missey and Tom Carroll. And yeah, and if you do want to schedule a demo, we do have our demo schedule on pubsent, pubsent.com. Soon that will be decommissioned to Convos, but currently still up there.
Because we're rebranding.
And yeah, because we're rebranding. And yeah, all those are the best ways to get a hold of us for sure.
I really want candidates to jump right into this and sign up in a big way because it's really going to be a game changer. Like I said, it's not just about a candidate winning, it's about derailing the old system. That's
Yeah.
what America needs is derailing the old system. And there's so much to talk about, and so many people have so many great ideas, and they never get the chance to convey their messages because it's so expensive at this point. And it's intentionally made vague from the really good from the people that are really good at the game of politics. So, but I really, Andrew, this has been incredible. Thank you, Andrew. This has been incredible. So this is Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics. Andrew Missy, incredible CTO of Convos, formerly PubSend, but the rebranding is happening quickly. And Convos is a great name, and definitely going to bring in a lot of young people, which is what we want to see in politics today. Andrew, I'll reach out to you down the road and try to see where you're at in a few months and see if you want to do the show again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Coach. This has been awesome. I've had a great time
I
speaking
had a
with you
great time.
about
It's
it.
incredible. I'm so excited for your future and your prospects. And you're young, so you're gonna have a long way to go down the road. You're not like me. My time's running out. So
It's all right. I'm getting there. But
thank you so
all
much,
right.
Andrew, Gabrielle. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.